Alright, sorry for that brief intermission. There is a such thing as being too greasy and it is hot as balls in here. So, we are going to continue on with the Jose Mourinho debate and we are going to start talking with the youth. Now, Jose Mourinho not known that much for promoting the youth, as I've talked about in the last part of the last video, but now we are going to go to Dan and see what he thinks about Jose Mourinho's youth policy and if he's going to install that into the team or not.
He hasn't been known for promoting a lot of youth in his past. A couple here and there, maybe sort of middling to good players, no one excellent. He's known for building teams out of sort of stars that he's been able to buy. The only team that he hasn't had sort of an open checkbook with was his initial Porto team. Obviously a great team, but he's only been able to do it once. Other than that, he's always had sort of that checkbook where he can buy players, buy anyone he needs. So he hasn't really needed to rely on youth. And once again, he's at a club where he doesn't need to rely on youth, but we are a club that demands that. We've had some incredible, youth players in the past. We had the Busby Babes, Fergie's fledglings, now sort of what do they call him, Louis' lads. A couple of those have been okay. Rashford's sort of very good, or Cam, who probably will be very good given the right development and if he stays on the right track. He has all the tools. He had a great season. We want to see him play the likes of Fosu Mensah and Borthwick Jackson as well, two great players. And Varela had some good moments as well last season. So essentially, all I want to do is see them. Occasionally I want to see them either as impact substitutes. I want to see them given a few starts. They're good players. They're useful players. Rashford, particularly when you're chasing a game, or even when you're not. If you're at the point in a game where the other team is coming back, maybe you're 1-0 up. A score Mourinho is very familiar with. If he's 1-0 up and they're coming at you, having Rashford's pace and his ability to run at people will certainly keep teams from thinking about going too far forward. I want to see them a lot. They're all useful. I want them to be confident playing for Man United. A big thing about youth as well is that they tend to love the club. They understand what it means to be a Manchester United player. That's something that, for all his personality, for all his arrogance, Ibrahimovic never will. The same can be said for the likes of Herrera, who maybe hasn't thrived. He hasn't had a lot of faith placed in him, but his performances recently have suggested someone who would be happy to leave. Youth players are players, or you would hope, who don't want to leave. We want that kind of player. We want the player who plays for the club, who fights for the badge. Over the last couple of years, we've seen some performances where they haven't just been poor. They've looked like teams full of players who just don't care. And that's what I hope we can sort of avoid by promoting youth and by keeping youth as much as possible within the system.
Yeah, I think Jose Mourinho is a passionate manager and he'll be passionate for the club. But with youth, you have to watch out for Louis van Gaal kind of used the youth as an excuse sometimes and then used it to his advantage. He had a very, very thin squad and he had to promote the youth through injury. The only reason Rashford got his chance is because Will Keane got injured. Will Keane was ahead of him in the pecking order, so there is that to think about. And players like Jesse Lingard and Varela, I wouldn't even consider them youth. They're 22, 23 now. They're not in the youth setup, and I don't believe that they are good enough to be in the first team setup. So they're useful squad players, but I wouldn't want to see them like Jesse Lingard last season was starting or playing pretty much every single game towards the last half of the season. It's like he's just not good enough. I'd like to see better players than him in our team. And that's why I think we should move on to the next thing that we're going to talk about here is transfer policy, because Jose Mourinho's already brought in a better player than Jesse Lingard. Obviously, if Jesse Lingard was conceived on Old Trafford itself, that's great. He's a Manchester boy. He loves the team and everything like that. But there's only so far that passion will get you. You do want good players, and one good player that we have definitely signed for the right midfield is Henrik Mkhitaryan. Very, very good player, very fast, good creative player, good with both feet. which I don't think Lingard really is. Lingard's fast, he's pacey, and he tracks back, but he's a good finisher too. He's got some exceptional finishing, but he's not creative enough for me. He's not creative like a Mkhitaryan would be, and I believe that players like that should be ahead because they are world stars and they are players that bring more talent, more creativity to the team.
For sure, and I agree with that. Mkhitaryan, though, is obviously he's the finished product. That's what we're getting. Lingard, yeah, he's maybe a bit on the older side. I think he should be a squad player. But he's a useful one. He knows where to be. He's got good attacking positioning senses. He seems like he'd be content to stay around, and that's the sort of player we need. We need those sort of utility players who can play all across, who will play anywhere, who'd love to play anywhere, who loves to play for the club. We've had them before. Most recently Danny Welbeck would play anywhere, and he would always play decently. Couldn't finish to save his life, but he offered other things.
Not to cut you off, but that's another thing Mourinho said in his press conference, that instead of like Louis van Gaal, who kind of had a utility man in every position, like Daley Blind that could play 3 different positions, he demands specialists in each position. He wants that player to be good at that one job and very, very good at it. Ibrahimovic, he's there to finish. He's there to bang in the goals. He doesn't want those utility players, and they're definitely good for a squad,
Yeah.
but they're not good enough starters in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's fair. They're definitely, Lingard should never start ahead of Mkhitaryan unless, something incredibly wondrous happens to his football playing ability. But the likes of Wes Brown and John O'Shea, those kinds of players have always been valued by our club, and you need those. You need those who've been brought up from in that mentality, who can slot in, who want to play, and who still have that winning mentality, who are still never gonna let an opposition player get in front of him or beat them to that second ball. Within the realms of their control anyway. So that's what that's how I feel. Transfer policy wise, Mkhitaryan's a fantastic signing. We've got Ibrahimovic. I might talk about him more later, but I'll let maybe you talk about the rest of them.
Well, yeah, we've got Eric Bailly too, who I've seen at Villarreal play, and he's very, very good. I've seen him shackle Ronaldo a few times. He's been very, very good. He's pacey and he's tall and he's good at heading the ball. But what I want to talk about transfer policy wise is just how good Jose Mourinho is in the transfer market. The last few years, Ed Woodward, everybody's made fun of him and dithering. The whole Ander Herrera thing was a joke. We've pretty much been a joke in the transfer market. And if we're getting a good player, it's totally a random marquee signing like Falcao on loan in the last day of nobody saw that coming, and obviously didn't turn out. It was exciting at the time, but it's we had Van Persie, Rooney. How are you going to get all these attacking players? It's more just to make the signing than to add balance to the team. Now I believe that we're making great signings that do add balance to the team. Mourinho has a plan, and he's buying the right players. He's not putting Louis van Gaal square pegs in round holes. He's getting the right players for the right job, for what he wants the team, for how he wants the team to play, basically. So obviously Mkhitaryan, Zlatan, who's an excellent finisher, athletic, never been pacey, so I don't know why people are complaining, he's old and he's slow. He's just good at everything. He's got great all-around game, his leadership. Super exciting player. I'm very, very happy that he's signed. He's going to bang in at least 15 goals this season. That's the kind of player we need to catapult us back to the top. And it's just a testament to Mourinho that even with Europa League soccer, which is pathetic soccer, and we all know that we're going to be playing against Midtjylland if we're lucky, they're just all crap teams, that we're still getting these Mkhitaryan, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, players that deserve to be playing in the Champions League and for very, very top of the footballing world sides, and we're getting them because we have Jose Mourinho. He's a good draw, and he's drawing in these good players that are buying into his, I say philosophy, but they're buying into what he brings to the team.
Yeah, absolutely. He is. He's gotten these fantastic players. The one thing, though, you say we sort of get those random players, and Ibrahimovic is a fantastic player, but it doesn't seem a little bit random to you.
Not at all. We only have Rashford, Rooney if you'd like to play him there, Martial, who's way better on the left wing, and I guess James Wilson as our
No, but-
strikers.
Just in terms of who we could get, it seems like that's one that's sort of a marquee big name that may or may not, like, I think he'll end up doing, you know, the 10-15 goal kind of thing. I think he will definitely hit that mark. But ultimately, this is a player who is 35. He's on the the dying side of his career.
He had the best season of his career last year.
Right, and, you know, this is in a team that won their league by over 20 points, so, you know, not...
That's true.
And
It is the French league.
Yeah, it's the French league, and 20 points is, you know, he played in those Champions League games, and he was good, not great.
He scored against all the top teams.
Yeah, and like I said, he wasn't fantastic, he wasn't bad either. I don't think he's not going to do well, but he is someone who is in sort of the end of his career, in a completely new league, new team built from scratch.
But isn't that exactly what you want? Like Ibrahimovic, like a leader and a for sure player coming in and only playing for a couple of years, so he's not going to inhibit Rashford or the young players coming through. He can show them a few things, teach them a few things. Yeah. And I applaud him for coming to the Premier League instead of bailing out and going to the MLS or China and making a crap load of money playing in a crap league that nobody really cares about.
Yeah.
Like he obviously cares enough to come to Manchester United to do well, and like Zlatan can make it in the Premier League. He wants to prove himself. So he is motivated.
No, that's definitely true. But you just wonder, like, yeah, he's motivated. Motivation obviously only gets you so far. I think, like I said, I think he'll do well. But it's hard to say exactly. It's a new league. It's a much, much, much stronger league. It's a much more physically demanding league. He's athletic, but he's never been he's never had the highest work rate. He's a really, really, really good player, but he's gonna have to do a lot of adaptation. This team in general is gonna have to do a lot of adaptation. There are so many new pieces in it. He's going to be good. You know, you say he won't inhibit, you know, the likes of Rashford, but these years are very important for a youth player at this age. And you know, you do see the late bloomers, but he's already started off so well, and you want to make sure that he gets to continue that momentum. The other thing about Ibrahimovic is his temperament. Does it get to the point where he can't play anymore but he doesn't want to be on the bench, and he sort of causes issues in the dressing room because of that? He's never really been in a situation that he's had to play on the bench much. The one time he did, Barcelona, he fell out with the coach, he fell out with the team, and you know, that was obviously for a fair reason. They had to accommodate Messi in the middle, and at that point Messi was just ridiculously good. Ibrahimovic is the best striker on our team right now, but whether that continues through this year or, you know, after, you know, how that happens is what I worry about. On top of that, you know, Mourinho, Ibrahimovic, two massive personalities. They have huge respect for each other right now, but you have to wonder whether that can all go wrong at any point, and how the fallout will be over that. So those are just my concerns. Like I said, I think he will do well. I think that 10 to 15 goal mark will be hit. I just don't want him to be sort of at the end of it all a player who maybe caused issues in the dressing room, or maybe forced his way into the team because of his name, or inhibited any of our younger players. He's a good signing, but you wonder with all the money why we couldn't have gone for maybe someone else. You know, I'm not sure who. Aubameyang springs to mind. You know, why we couldn't have gone for one of those other.
Because he probably would have inhibited Rashford further, because he's just coming into his prime. He would have been here for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
And I think Ibrahimovic is a great signing because in England, the media is your worst enemy, especially with players and managers that are arrogant and have big egos. Like, the media always attacked Mourinho. They always attacked Ronaldo. The media is all over Rashford. He's England's new darling. He's their new favorite thing. He's the flavor of the week. So Ibrahimovic, if Rashford, because he's going to go out of form. It happens to every single player. Ibrahimovic is there to kind of just take the pressure off him, just kind of guide him along, let him do his thing in peace. He's there to kind of help him out and not take away. Even if he takes away his playing time, he's only going to be doing it for a year or two.
So my thing is that, like, if he inhibits him, that's fine, but if he inhibits him while also not like if you he might have he'll probably have that 10 to 15 goal at least one season. 10 to 15 goals isn't massive.
It's more than any of our players scored.
Well, yeah, but it's not more than say Van Persie scored in that title winning season. Not to compare, he might do more, he might do less. Well, you know, you can't say right now. But if he's inhibiting Rashford at that sort of for only a year or 2 years, but causing other problems, or you know, and maybe not having the output you'd want. Compare that to say, ideally in my head, Aubameyang, even if he has a rough year or two, eventually he's gonna get to grips with it. He inhibits Rashford for a bit longer, but he also gives more to the team for longer. We sort of have a better defined way of playing around him. Ibrahimovic, in the teams he's been in, they've all been built around him. He's been the main man, and that's absolutely fine, but if we become too reliant on this player for only a year or two, you know, where does that leave us when he leaves? I guess that's a bigger concern.
I also think that Ibrahimovic takes the pressure off the other player, like you're talking about players that inhibit other players and are forced to play the team, Wayne Rooney. Like, we're already accommodating him.
But we both agree he shouldn't.
Yeah, Rooney definitely shouldn't be in the first place team, but there's definitely something in his contract that says he has to be. That's why people are playing him in all these positions, but it kind of takes the pressure off Rooney being the main man. Zlatan will be the main man, and then when he goes, I think Rooney's only going to be around for another year or two anyways. He's just there to break the record, and yay Wayne Rooney, and then he can go off to China or the MLS or whatever too. So we're kind of building this new generation, and Zlatan Ibrahimovic is kind of our slow transition into the newer, younger generation.
Yeah.
So that's what I think he's just there to do. He's just there, both as a coach and a player, just to help kind of get us winning over our next 2 years, and then leave a winning mentality there with some of the younger players like Rashford.
Yeah, and no, I definitely see your point, and he's the kind of signing I think he'll get the goals, and I think he'll play well. It's just for how long, whether it's worth it to have sort of this I guess experiment with him for however many years, while we could be maybe either bringing in a different striker who can play longer, or letting other players. I mean, Rashford, yeah, you're right, he's going to go out of form, so having other sort of youth players or younger players who can maybe contribute more to our long-term future. That's all I think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely fair. Transfer policy. So we talked about the 3 players who've already gone. We've talked about Eric Bailly, we've talked about Henrik Mkhitaryan, and we've definitely talked about Zlatan. The 4th one, Mourinho said he wanted to make 4 signings, and that the 4th one would be the one to make the world stand up. Between us, we definitely think it's going to be Paul Pogba. It's been announced recently that Real Madrid dropped out of the race to sign him, and that it's just us. Apparently there's £100 million bid on the table. Obviously no player is worth that. It's just crazy money these days. But Paul Pogba, we do have the money, we do have the financial muscle to flex, and we can get him. And I believe that he would be the perfect signing, the perfect all-around, maybe even Roy Keane-esque signing to bring the personality and the identity back to Manchester United. He's definitely got a point to prove, and I do think that he has friends at the club, and that he wants to come back and he wants to prove that he can do it, because he's basically won everything that he can do with Juventus, and I think it's time that he came back and proved what he can do in the English Premier League.
Yeah, he's a really good player. He can do everything. You know, he's strong, he can drive through the lines, he can dribble, he can pass. He's such a good player. I imagine he'd play next to Schneiderlin, and Schneiderlin would hold more. He'd be more defensive, but both can do a little bit of both things, which is great. They're 2 very multifunctional midfielders. If we were not to get Pogba, who do you think? I mean, I've heard Matuidi.
Matuidi or Conte's probably going to Chelsea, but Matuidi's a fine player. He's a lot older than I thought he was. He's 29 years old.
Yeah.
He's a very good, what we need, essentially what Ander Herrera was supposed to be. He's a very good link between the midfield and the attack, which is a player, and he's an engine too. He runs all over the field. He's kind of like a Ji-Sung Park in that retrospect. We do need a player like that. We definitely need that midfielder. It's just whether Matuidi's really good enough. I think if you don't get Pogba, we have to throw money at somebody to get some other world-class midfielder. I really wanted Pjanic, however you say him, but he obviously went to Juventus.
He's a lot less physical too. I think we need sort of that physicality.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to have a two-man midfield in the Champions League and the Premier League, I think we want that physicality. Someone who came up, he played on the right during the Euros, but ended up playing really well and ended up through the middle a lot, as much as I saw. Moussa Sissoko was fantastic. He's someone who before he went to Newcastle I'd heard about. And he, sort of those highlight clips don't really do justice to players, but he looked good. Someone who, just as an off-field suggestion, Moussa Sissoko could probably play there, and he could probably play there quite effectively. Given the right sort of coaching, he has the engine, he can pass a little bit.
He got relegated with Newcastle.
Yeah, but that team was terrible. And
I don't judge international soccer at all, because good players like Ronaldo wasn't that good, Lewandowski wasn't that good. There's a lot of players that weren't good there, and then there's some bad players that are, like how Robson Kanu was the revelation there, but I don't want him. Like, he's garbage. Like, no offense to Sissoko, but I just don't think he's good enough. We need a good world name signing.
But I mean, in terms of, I think that Newcastle team, they were just so ready to just call it quits at that point that I think it's hard to judge off that Newcastle team. I mean, they have good players. They played, but they're a bit. They're just a random sort of name to throw out there. I don't think Matuidi maybe is a bit old. He's a really good player, but other than that, not that many names come to mind. Pogba is the be all and end all. He would be a fantastic get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's not too many midfielders out there that are physical enough for the Premier League and are also technically gifted enough to still score the goals, be creative. Because Pogba's the whole package. He's everything. Whereas your Conte, he's not going to score a screamer from 30 yards or anything like that, but he's a very good shield. And Matuidi, he's not going to score a lot of goals. He is pretty creative. I've seen some good passing and some good forward-thinking runs and things like that, but he's not a goal scorer really either. So Pogba is that marquee signing that I think we should be looking at. That'll put us back on the map really in terms of here we are. We've beaten Real Madrid and Barcelona and all the top teams to probably one of the world's most coveted players. So I think it will happen. I think we will get him, for reasons before. He definitely has a point to prove. And I don't think Italian football really suits him all that much. He was definitely built for the Premier League. And I think that he can thrive under Jose Mourinho, who also, it was released in the media, made a fat bid for him when he was at Chelsea last year. So he is a player Mourinho's been looking at for a while. So will it happen? Who really knows? But I guess we'll have to discuss that in future episodes. So thanks again for watching. Hopefully you didn't mind the intermission there in the middle. Stay greasy, subscribe, comment. We will respond to all of your comments. So give us ideas on what you want to see in the next episode. And have a good one.
In fact, there was something else I wanted to talk about.